Okay, so here we are. We've got Spring Boot set up, and we're now going to create a simple editor. Simple is a relative term. It depends on how much we know. And right now, the assumption is that we don't know anything about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So we're going to start from that assumption and go. So here we go into back to Visual Studio Code and where we left off. So where we left off is we were running this hello on this tab. What we're going to do is modify this hello to have our editor pane on the left side. And you'll remember that we got Bootstrap onto our website before. We're going to need to do that again so we have it to make it look nicer. And it's actually easier to program HTML with and lay it out because we want to do this side-by-side thing and then have it fold when it's on a phone. So we want to keep that up. So a couple things we could do here. We can go and modify this the same way we did before. And that's probably the better way to go. I was going to suggest that we can just go and copy and paste what we did before. But let's go ahead and do modify it again. It gives us good practice, and then we'll also learn something new about starting from fresh, because instead of pasting in our address book form, we're going to do something else with the layout. So let's do that. So what do we need to do? We did this before, so we're going to go to getbootstrap.com. So get, and I'll put this down in the description below, the link. So Bootstrap, and it's 5.1.3. I think that's what we used last time. That should be the latest. And I love the way this site looks. It looks really good. All right, so what do we need to do? We've done this before. We went to Docs, and somehow we went to get it. Oh, Quick Start. Here's the Quick Start right here. So this was the before, and this is the after. So we're just going to copy the after. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code, and we've got hello, so we're going to have to modify this. I'm just going to Control A and V and just paste it straight in, and then just make the changes. All right, so this is called Blog Editor. And they've got hello world. That's perfectly fine. Looks good to me. There's that new line at the bottom, and we just changed index.html, so it should be able to pick up this change. So let's see what it looks like. So here's what it used to look like, and refresh, and here's what it looks like now. So we've got Bootstrap back in there, and that's a pretty easy step. All right, next thing we need to do is we want to create the left pane. So let's go, and right here where it says Hello World, we want to create a container. Now let's go to Bootstrap. So I want to teach you how to fish right here. So what we're going to do is look at the documentation. So the documentation's out there, and we just got to find it. And part of the, is it a skill? It might be a skill of being a software engineer is knowing where to look to find things. So this is one of those skills, and I'm going to show you another way too, which is very interesting after I show you this way. So we can scroll down here, and there's a lot of really helpful content here, and we want containers. And so this is explaining how containers work, and we talked about this before, and there's 3 different ones here. We've got container, and that's the one we're going to use. And so a container holds our, I'm going to call it Bootstrap content because it's going to be laid out with Bootstrap. And so it's going to be in the middle of the page, and it's going to flex and move back and forth with the size of our browser. Not that anyone does this with their browser squishing back and forth. Usually only a developer does that. But you do have people that are looking at your website on a phone, on a tablet, on a desktop computer, and those are different sizes. All right, so that's the one we're going to use, and they have 2 others. Fluid is width of 100%, and it's not choppy when it breaks. It's a fluid sizing thing, and then breakpoint is based on breakpoints. Okay, so what we're looking for is the default container, and I think we did this in the previous lesson or one of the previous lessons. Let's go ahead and copy that, and that's going to give us our container, and we're going to just put that around our hello. So I'm just going to paste it in. Okay, now I remember doing this. And let's put it there. And that's formatted. So now we're inside of a container. Let's see what happens. I'm expecting Hello World to move. And it's okay that we're kind of repeating that other lesson because I think you need to do things 3 times before it starts to stick. And so this would be a second time doing this. Okay, so it did move. So that means to me that we're in our container because the container has margins on the right and left sides of it. And so that's good. All right, so what do we need to do next? I'm going to leave hello world there. And what we need to add are 2 columns. I want 2 columns, one taking up half the page and one taking up the other half the page. On the left side, I want our editor. So let's go ahead and do that. So back to Bootstrap, and I have not looked at this myself, so you're going to see how I explore this. So fluid containers, CSS variables, I'm scrolling down looking for something that tells me how to split it, and I don't see anything here. This is telling me about the containers, which is good because that's what this page is about. All right, so the grid. The grid is going to tell me about how the grid is laid out. So Bootstrap is a grid of 12 columns going across, and that's how they divide things. So if I wanted something to take up half the page, I want it to take up 6 columns. And if I want the other half taken up with something else, I'm going to make that 6 columns to equal 12. And so that's how that works. On the address book form example that we looked at before, you'll notice that the city, state, and zip, it was probably something like a 6 for the city, the state was probably a 2, and the zip code was probably a 4 or something like that. So it added up to 12, but it broke it up into different pieces to get it to lay out nicely across the bottom like that. Okay, so let's look at the grid, and that's going to give us an explanation of how it works. And you'll see here, here's a 3-column grid. So this is really close to what we want. We want a 2-column grid. So it sounds to me that we could just copy this and remove one of the columns and we'll get 2. And they are simply typing in call instead of the way that you can split it into different pieces. So right now we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to go with the simple example, and that's this one. If we need to get into some other kind of more complex layout where we need to add that, what I was saying about call 6, we'll do that. But right now, let's see how this works out, because if they've got 3 dividing evenly like this, we should be able to get 2 to divide evenly. So let's copy that. And let's just copy it straight in to see what 3 looks like. All right, so I'm just going to put a new line there and paste. And the Visual Studio Code's doing an actual good job of pasting this stuff in already formatted. Maybe that's a setting that's set up. I didn't notice that before. But one of the things I also do, and this is preference. I'm going to set my spaces by clicking on spaces down here at the bottom. I'm going to click it to using spaces versus tabs. There's a war going on for spaces versus tab. And I like spaces and not tabs. Others like tabs, and that's okay. I'm going to set it to 2 as far as the spaces go. All right, so there we go. And now the formatting is different because I went ahead and split it in half, basically. So now I'm going to format the document, and now we've got a different formatting. I'm going to save with Control S. I'm on Windows. It's Command S on Mac. And then let's see what our page looks like. Blog editor is this one. So if I refresh, hey, I've got 3 columns in the middle. So what's weird is I was expecting column, 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 but notice that it's over, this left one is over here. So what I think happened is it split and this is centered. Let's verify that. Now here's a tool that we're going to use a lot. It's called the Inspect tool. I'm going to go ahead and right click anywhere on the white part of the page, and then see down here at the bottom there's Inspect, and then sometimes it goes away on Windows. I don't know why. Maybe something else got added to the menu. Okay, and then I'm going to click on Inspect. It's going to open up a pane. I keep mine on the far right. I think that's the default. So notice I can squish the browser here too, just by moving this over, and you see what happens. Okay, but I want to know why this is in the middle like that, or why it's not what I expected it to be. So if I click on this tool, and I don't even know what this tool is called. All right, let's call it the Select tool. I can click that, and now it turned blue. And I'm going to click on this column. Now you notice that this is the column right here that we added, and they all 3 look the same. And notice that the text is, in fact, centered. So that explains the mystery as to why column was set over. If we set it to the left, let's see what that looks like. Now the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use the Inspect tool, and I've already got it blue, so I haven't even clicked on it yet. So I'm going to click, and now what that did is it selected this element. And now I've got it in here. And so call flex 1, this is CSS settings to get it to do what we need it to do. But let's go ahead and do this. I want to text a line. So text align, and I'm going to say left. Okay, and now you'll notice that everything shifted over to the left. There's a little bit of a gutter here that's not here, so we'll see what's up with that. So we've got that pasted in. Maybe it's our hello is not in a container it's not in a row, so it's setting off to the side. And we'll learn more about Bootstrap in a little while. Okay, so we've got that. So let's go ahead and split our columns into 2 instead of 3 now. Now that we know how it's working, all we have to do, and it's okay that it's centered for now because we might actually like centered. I'm not sure yet. So let's just cut out this third one. And I'm going to save. And then when I go back in and refresh, now we've got 2. So, and to see what they look like, I'll use this select tool. And so that's half and that's half with a margin on either side. And if I shrink this inspect thing around, I usually have that open all the time. So I'm used to it being there. And then so there's that. And so notice how the columns got bigger, but is it pretty much in half? It should be exactly in half actually. All right, so we've got a left and a right. Let's start going and adding our editor. All right, instead of the word column, we're going to add something else. Now, we need something to be able to enter into, to start typing. And that's called, in HTML, it's called a text area. Now, I'm going to show you another website that I like, and it's called Mozilla Developer Network. So let's do Mozilla Developer Network. And that is developer.mozilla.org, and I will put that in the description below. And what we're going to do here is click on this, and that gives us a whole lot of resources. So a lot to read about. This is a great website for learning. I come here often. Okay, so references. So you notice all the different things that they can teach you in here. Let's go to HTML. And then down on the left side is their, I'm going to call it a table of contents. And they teach everything, and it's got every tag here. What we want right now, and they've got tutorials as well, which is great. We want the reference. So in the reference, they've got all of them. And they're in alphabetical order. And the one I'm looking for is text area. Now, text area is different than an input box. Like when you're logging into a website, you've got an input box, which is input type text. And it's a single line input. And then the next one is input type password. And so that way it's hidden when you're typing your password. So those are 2 types of inputs. And this one's actually called text area rather than input. And you might have seen that on a bigger form when you're typing in some kind of description. And so that's what I'm looking for here. And it's in alphabetical order, so I should be able to find it just by scrolling down and keep going. There's text area. So this is giving us a page that has text area, and so this is what it looks like, and that's what we wanted. So a text area looks like this, and it doesn't necessarily have to have an ID, a name, a row, or a calls. We're going to paste it in straight and see what it looks like. Actually, not paste it, we're going to type it. So text area and end text area is what it's called, and then there's content in the middle. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll replace the one up on top, and we're just going to type tag text area. Oh, it's the second one down. And then I'm going to close that tag, and there we go. So let's see what happens when we refresh our page now. And our blog editor's here, and I refresh. Okay, so I've got a centered text area. And there's that's going to be our preview over on this side. So we can type in this, hello. Okay, so we're typing. Let's make this a little bit bigger. We can actually do this, and it doesn't size, it's only sizing down and not across. I'm not exactly sure why I'm not able to size it across, but this is the default behavior. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some stuff with it. Now notice it's kind of looking like the default component altogether. We need to add something to it to make it be Bootstrap. So notice how a lot of these things have class container, class row, class call. Those are Bootstrap CSS names. So we're going to go ahead and go into text area in Bootstrap. So is text area even a thing here? It must be. So we've got forms, and it's a form control. So under form control, let's click on that. And we see here's the email, here's the text area. I see that class form control. So if we set it to form control, it's probably going to look a little bit different. And so form control is Bootstrap's way of saying, hey, this is one of my controls, and I'm going to decorate it the way that I do it as Bootstrap. So let's go ahead and do that. So class equals form control. Let's go over here and type right inside of the tag. So inside of the first text area tag, I'm going to space, and then I'm going to type class equals form. Oops. It helps with the quotes too sometimes, and I'm not used to that. Form dash control. All right, so when I save this, let's see what it looks like now. Blog editor and refresh. Ah, now it's taking up the whole width of this column, and it is rounded corners and a lighter border and still sizable. So that's good. So now we could type a lot more content. So let's see if we type, let's type H1. Well, we're going to pretend like we're going to type hello. And that ends with an H1. Okay, that works for now. Let's pretend that we're typing out a blog post. So I'm going to, just to see how it works, because we haven't done this before, so I'm going to test it out and see if we like it. Blog. Let's make it like this. My first blog post. All right, and then I'm going to do, so in HTML, you have various tags to use, and MDN is a great place to learn about them. The ones that we usually use are headers and paragraphs if you're doing a blog. Oh, you don't spell it out though, it's just P. Okay, and so I'm just going to type, this is the first paragraph of my first blog post. And then you don't have to end it, but you really should, like this. So it's got an opening paragraph tag and a closing paragraph tag. All right, so we're typing in, and this works okay. I can see that it's going to be a problem later on when we're trying to tab things in. Like say, okay, let's do an example. So say I want to make an unordered list of fruits that I like. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's do P, my favorite fruits. And I'm going to put a colon there. All right, so then I'm going to end the P. All right, now I'm going to do an unordered list. So there's an ordered list, which is an OL, ordered list, and there's an unordered list, which is UL. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with an L. And we'll learn about that on MDN. Right now, we're just trying to test out this text area. So we will learn all of these tags and what they do as we use them. Right now, this is a test. So what we do, and I'll show you how we do this. It's indentation, and indentation isn't necessary, but it is for a human to be able to read it easily, right? Because if you can smash them all together without the new lines and without the indentation, it'll run fine in the browser. But for a human to edit would be really, really hard. So we're going to do this. And so here's where I see the problem already. If I hit tab here to tab like I do in Visual Studio Code to tab over 2 spaces, if I hit tab here, I just left the component, and I guess I'm up there on the URL bar. So that's already a problem with using text area. So I'm already planning in my head that we are going to remove the text area and put something else in. All right, so favorite fruits. I like apples. And so LI is list item. So whether it's a ordered list or an unordered list, it's going to be list item inside, and an unordered list is just going to put a bullet. In an ordered list, it's going to put a number or some other count that you can do Roman numerals or letters or something like that. So apple, I like oranges too. How about bananas? Bananas are good. Oh, I put it inside of the list item tag. Bananas, bananas, like this. Okay. All right, so we're closing that. So just by doing this simple test, we identified that the text area isn't going to be the final thing that we use here. It's good enough for now. Because what we would typically want, notice how everything's smashed up against the left. We typically would want it indented like that. And we probably want it to be a fixed width font, which we can do here. See how that is right there? We can highlight it, and let's go ahead and do this again with our inspect tool. So we're going to take this, and we're going to pick this text area. And then, it's remembering the height in the element as we drag it down. Let's set the font. It's called font-family, and we will learn more about this later. And what's a good fixed font? Is it called fixed? Monospace. How about monospace. Okay, now you see here it's now monospace. Instead of looking fancy like in a magazine or something like that, it looks like this, where the spacing is all even no matter what letter we're using. So we could do this, but it still can't tab this. See, when I tab away. And we can do something to make it tab inside of this, but it's just probably easier for us to swap out a text area, but let's use it for now. Okay, so now we've got an editor pane. This still doesn't look right. What does hello world mean here? And I see a square that is a text area when it's blank. If I refresh here, it's small and like that, hello world. I don't even know what I'm looking at here. So let's do some editing to fix some things. All right, so hello world, not the right thing here. Let's change that to my blog. All right, so that's fine. It's our blog or my blog. You have your blog. So let's leave that like that. And let's see what that looks like. I'm usually in the habit of doing one thing at a time and checking it. Okay, my blog. And notice how it's over to the left. We will fix the formatting to probably a little bit later. And we've got this text area. So we need some way to label this. So let's go back to Bootstrap because I want to call it editor. Probably editor. All right, so we see labels up above these. Here's a perfect example. This is the text area we actually took, and there's a label right above it. So what do we have to do here? There's a label, and we can go to the label end and Control C to copy, and let's just paste it in. Now, I usually don't suggest copy paste. You really shouldn't do it. You should learn how to type it, and it actually sticks in memory that way. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so label. So as you do this, now you're going to learn how to set these things up. Is that the right spelling for label? Yes. All right, so label and something. I don't know what it is. I don't remember. So for. So label for is going to tell it it's the label for some other component. So that way when you tab into that component, it can say what it is to, say, a screen reader. So we're going to name our text area editor. Okay, and so we've got label for editor. We've got class, you'll see here, is form label. So let's do that. So class, so that must be something for Bootstrap. And it's called form label. And what's left? Then it's got the label itself and the ending tag. Okay, so this one is going to be editor. And it closed the tag for me. All right, we'll save, and let's see what that looks like. Editor. Okay, it's over the middle. Probably looks okay for now. We will make this look much better. We're better off with Bootstrap right now, and then we will make it look much better later. Editor's fine where it is. I'm okay with that. And we've got something to type into. Let's set the height on this text area. So right now we're going to learn how to do a style sheet. And we'll use a style sheet a lot, and that's how we would actually fix that editor label, and maybe it's make it bold or something like that. So let's go and make a style sheet that we're going to use to size this text area. All right, so in our resources folder under static, we have our index.html. I'm going to create a new folder just by clicking on this little folder plus icon, and I'm going to call it CSS. So whatever style sheets we have in here, we're going to add here. Now there's a lot of tools that make CSS easier. We're going to just keep it basic, and we're just going to add it manually, so that way you learn how to do that. When you get to those tools, you'll understand what it's doing. All right, so CSS folder. Now we need a file inside of that, and we're just going to call it style.css. Okay, so it's empty. We've got nothing there. We've got a text area here. We're supposed to give it a name for editor, so let's go ahead and do that, or we're going to give it an ID. So ID equals, and it's going to be what the for is in the label, editor. So that way when the screen reader comes through and we tab in a text area, it's going to say editor, because that's the label text here. Okay, so let's save that, and we've got an ID now. So the way selectors work in CSS, there's a couple of them. We could target the text area itself, like this, and then put our properties inside of here, kind of like you saw in the inspect window on the browser. That's going to target any text area. Now we're probably only going to have one on this blog, and actually we're not going to have any because we're going to replace it. But right now text area would work for us, but it'll also decorate all of the text areas, and we probably don't want this text area the same size as this one. Well, we would on this thing, but say we had some other text area down here, we don't want it to be the same height. So let's go ahead and use ID. So that's by tag. This with this hash thing is by ID, and then this with a dot is by class. And we'll get into more of that later. That's just a brief introduction. So let's go ahead and do editor. So now we are targeting the thing with the ID editor. And let's set the height. Oh, notice that the spacing is off. So you could stick with the default if you want to. I am in the habit of only seeing 2. So I am just going to do that. And then when I close that and then tab over, now I've got 2. That's what I'm used to. So there's a couple of things in CSS. And what that does, it allows us to control the height. The same way we typed in font family to change the text area to monospace, it's got various things. It's got font family, font size, font weight. So those are properties of fonts. It also does things like height and width. And so what we're going to do in this editor, and we'll see more of the properties as we keep developing this blog, because when we're in the inspect window, we're going to see and manipulate all of the, not all of them, but many of the attributes that we need to change. So let's do height. And this is just a guess. I'm going to say 80 vertical height. So what that means is it's going to be 80% of the vertical height. And so these things end in a semicolon, so you can start the next one. So let's just do this and see what happens when we do this. Now I'm expecting this to take up some space. I don't know what space it's going to take up. It's going to take up something. So when I refresh, it did nothing. Why would it do nothing? Let's find out. So we'll inspect. And we've got something ID editor, but I do not see anything from our style sheet in here. I know what happened. So when you make a new style sheet, you need to add it to the files that you want it to be included in. And we typically do this in the head tag, just like Bootstrap did here. So when we added Bootstrap, we added this style sheet here. So now we need to do the same thing for our style sheet. And we can follow the example up above here. So we're doing a link, and it's got an href, and it's relative. So to this index HTML, relative to this, there's a CSS folder, and there's a style CSS. So to do that, we would type CSS here, and then style CSS. And then you see how the editor's helping us here. I barely had to type anything. And so it found that there. If I wanted it to be, like, say we're nested in a couple folders on index, say we're in help, or say we're in the about menu and we're down on something, if we had such a thing, we're pretty deep down. And we say we had a style sheet up above for the global style sheet. Typically you want to keep them together, but we would want to access it this way. So root would take us to the very beginning of the index website. And that makes it relative. So relative to our index page is where the CSS folder is, and then where the style CSS file is. All right, and then there's another thing to add here. There's a couple of attributes. And this one is rel, and we're going to set it to style sheet just like they did up there. Style sheet. All right, and now we can close the tag. All right, now let's see if something happens with our editor. Hey, that worked. Okay, so now we can type in here, and we've got an editor up and running. It doesn't look pretty, but it's going to be functional. Okay, and that's it for this section. See you in the next one.